Happy Thursday, everybody. You are watching The Sweat. I'm Jesse Cofield, here to deliver the goods. All right, I'm talking NBA Conference Finals. Plus, special guest Danielle Alvari will join the program to give us a WNBA season preview. We're going to get physical with Steve Buchanan and our baseball dudes in Put Up Your Bukes. But first, the Dallas Stars are returning to the Western Conference Finals for the second time in 4 seasons. On Monday, the Stars shut down the Kraken 2-1 to win Game 7. Let's bring in NHL.com's Pete Jensen, RotoWire's AJ Scholes, and our own Jeff Ulrich here. Fellas, Stars are moving on. Pete, thoughts on Game 7 and that sensational performance from Jake Ottinger?
Well, Jake Ottinger probably is the best goalie left standing here after all the upsets in these different conferences and divisional brackets. It's pretty remarkable that he's 5-0 following a loss this postseason, and he hasn't been at his very best. I don't think the Stars should have been trailing as many times as they have so far. Maybe that's to their detriment in this round against a very seasoned, deep, shutdown group in Vegas. We'll see, but they also haven't gotten the very best out of Jason Robertson. I feel like that's a guy that maybe is a dark horse Conn Smythe candidate that nobody's really talking about, was one of the top 5 players in the whole NHL this regular season. So I'm looking at Dallas as like probably the best equipped to win it all at this point, but a lot of people are picking against them and doubting them for different reasons. But they're the only team I have expected to get this far out of the 4 remaining teams. So wanted to make note of that.
AJ, what did you think about that Game 7?
Well, I went into it thinking that Seattle had a good chance to win that game. But, you know, as Pete mentioned, Ottinger looked really good. And when Seattle hadn't scored after the first period, I was starting to fade a little bit on that expectation. Dallas just took that game in control. And 2-1, you know, really this was a 2-0 game. The Kraken got that 1 goal late to sort of make something out of it. But Dallas controlled that game, and there was no point at which it really seemed like Seattle had a chance. You know, if they can bring that into the next round, they're going to be hard to beat. Though I do think Seattle pointed out, or brought to light rather, a few ways you can try and beat the Stars, and it'll be up to Vegas to try and capitalize on it.
All right, Jeff, what was your big takeaway?
Yeah, I mean, look, Seattle, I thought had a chance in that game too. I mean, they did give themselves a chance, but the Stars have been resilient. I mean, the Stars, a lot of the ways that they remind me of the Oilers, they're a very dominant offensive team. They can carry the play at any point. They do give up some chances though, but what do the Stars have? They have a goalie who Pete mentioned bounces back and bails them out. That's really, really good to have in the playoffs, especially when you're a high-powered offensive team. So I like the Stars going forward. I think that was a big win for them to get over that. And, you know, Vegas has a lot of the similar characteristics to me that Seattle has, but questions in net for Vegas, I think, are going to come to the forefront in this next series.
All right, Eastern Conference Finals begin tonight between the Panthers and Hurricanes. AJ, Canes favored to win this series, but Florida has shown us time and time again that we have underestimated them.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely a potential. I'm leaning towards the Canes here in this one, so I could count myself as the multitude of people who have doubted Florida time and time again. But look, I think we can't undersell the fact that Teuvo Teravainen is looking, for all intents and purposes, like he will be back in the lineup tonight. I'm sure they'll call him a game time decision, but he slotted into the 3rd line at practice, and everything points to him returning. And this was already a deep Carolina squad that really used their depth to get to this point, and you add in a player of Teravainen's caliber, and it's just going to make this team that much better and that much harder to beat. So I think that's probably the biggest storyline heading into tonight's game.
Jeff, what do you think the biggest storyline is for this series?
Yeah, you know, I mean, you mentioned people doubting Florida. Definitely in the first 2 series, that was the case. You know, they had no business being whatever they were, plus 250 in the series against Toronto to start, basically an underdog in every game. That was a joke. I mean, people were definitely, you know, just undervaluing them. But I don't really think that's the case anymore. This series line is pretty close where, you know, Carolina's only minus 135. Clearly, you know, people are trying to jump on this Florida bandwagon. You look at what Florida's done in the playoffs. They've gotten outstanding goaltending from Sergei Bobrovsky. I really question how long that's going to last. And when that does start to crack, or if it does, Florida's in trouble because they've allowed 35 shots on goal per game. They're not as good at 5-on-5 if you look at the stats as Carolina. And AJ mentioned, that Carolina's been doing this without one of their top wingers, and now they get it back. I just think Carolina is going to be too much here for Florida. So I look at this series, and I'm just maybe I'm trying to predict this too quick, but I think this could be the spot where Florida, unfortunately, kind of the Cinderella story ends.
Pete, do you agree? Is this where the glass slipper shatters for Florida?
So we all know Carolina is such a great home team over the past 2 postseasons, but a lot of people maybe don't realize that Florida is 6-1 on the road this postseason. So if you go into the series expecting Florida to at least win 1 game in Carolina, which the Islanders did in Game 5, facing elimination in the first round, I don't see why Florida can't keep this going against the team that's still without arguably its top goal scorer in Svechnikov. I feel like over time, that lack of physicality could catch up to them. I mean, are they really going to get another 10 points from Jordan Martinook? I don't know. I mean, it's one of the biggest surprises that I've ever seen in a playoff series where a perennial bottom 6 player hits double digits and was tied with Connor McDavid. So really ridiculous. You just got to tip your cap there. But can it continue for Carolina? I have my doubts, and Bobrovsky's playing like a man possessed right now, and I give him a slight edge at the very least over Freddie Anderson or Antti Ranta, regardless of which goalie starts in any given game for Carolina.
All right, let's talk showdown contest for this one, Jeff. Who do you want in the captain spot? Does it have to be one of the goalies?
I do think that we're going to get a little bit of a lower scoring game in this series, and maybe just a lower scoring series overall. These 2 teams have had a lot of time off, like a week. I mean, I fully would not be shocked if these offenses came out rusty. You just saw a bit of a slower paced game than I think people are used to seeing. So I do like Frederik Andersen here. I think that he's the most viable, just kind of common sense captain. This is a player where his save percentage in the playoffs is .931. I mean, he's well up there in goals saved above expectation. He's been fabulous. He's basically had 1 poor game. Andersen at home here. I mean, Florida can obviously bring it, but I mean, the upside here is if Florida does start coming in waves and Andersen, has another big game, I mean, you're going to absolutely pummel the competition. So I do like him. I think Sebastian Aho is another option, playing big minutes. And as I said, I think Florida is still giving up too many scoring chances. So Aho's in play, but I think Andersen has to be the top target.
Pete, who's your top target for the captain spot?
I'll go with Carter Verhaeghe, Florida Panthers. I mean, this guy has 9 points in 7 road playoff games, including 4 goals. He's got goals in like 4 of his past 6 games. I mean, he's been a point per game player over the past 2 postseasons combined, scores big goals in big spots. And I think in the regular season, he showed everybody that he can reach a different level. He's not just a product of Barkov or whoever he's playing with. Regardless, through thick and thin, this guy scored 42 goals to lead the Panthers in the regular season, even more than Matthew Tkachuk. Get him for a little cheaper than Tkachuk. I think you're in business here. And Florida has shown that they're more than capable of beating anybody on the road this postseason.
All right, AJ, who do you want in your captain spot?
Well, I'm with Jeff here. I think Freddie Andersen makes the most sense. But if you want to save a little bit and go with another option, I think Brent Burns is in play tonight at 14-4. The Panthers have allowed, as Jeff said, the most shots per game in the postseason at 35.3. So I expect we'll see a high volume for Burns. He actually leads the Hurricanes in shots during the postseason as well. He'll be out there with that top power play unit. So comparatively to the top price options at your captain spot, he will give you more lineup flexibility. But I think, Freddie Andersen is certainly worth it as well.
All right, Pete, going to need some value for that lineup. Who are you looking at?
So I think at this stage of the game with a lot of these different teams, you look at where's the next level going to come from with some guys that have been underwhelming so far. I feel like Aaron Ekblad has more to give, and we've started to see it lately with a couple of multi-point games, including Game 5 at Toronto where he had a goal and an assist. This is a high caliber, obviously former #1 pick in the league, and just overall was overshadowed by the breakout star Brandon Montour in the regular season. But if Florida's going to reach that next level and overcome a very difficult opponent here with the possession dominance of Carolina and, of course, the structure that they bring defensively. They're going to need more than just Montour on both ends of the ice. So if Ekblad can be a workhorse on both ends and chip in the scoring more so than he did in the regular season or the first 2 rounds, I think Florida wins this series. I think he's a big X factor for them, and I'd slot him in against Carolina here for game 1.
AJ, what do you think? Are you looking out for some value?
I'm going to consider Teravainen. He's, like I said, he looks set to return to a third line role, and he's a steal at 4,800 on the showdown slate tonight. He should get some minutes with the man advantage. I don't know that they'll put him on the top unit, but should be out there at least with the number 2. So to get a player of his caliber for under 5K is too good to be true. I know, there people are going to be scared off by the long-term injury absence, so that could lower his drafted percentage here as well. So it puts you in a better spot if he does, in fact, go off like I expect he might.
All right, Jeff, what do you think?
Yeah, certainly Teravainen. I mean, people may not even realize he's active tonight. So like AJ said, I think he'll get low ownership. I don't mind going up to Martin Necas either. He's only 8,100 top line role. Again, playing Florida here, who's allowing a ton of shots, is going to have a great chance to get you the shots on goal bonus. I mean, he's a player who can just pop up with 2 goals. I mean, again, the Hurricanes get a few power play opportunities. So the other Carolina player who I would have a lot of interest in is Jesperi Kotkaniemi at 5,400. I mean, essentially playing the second line center role. It's a very good role player. And these are the kind of players who have been just getting it done for Carolina. We mentioned Martinek in the last series, but Kotkaniemi is another player who, if he just showed up and scored like 5 times in the series, I wouldn't be that surprised. That's just the way Carolina has been getting it done, and they're playing a weaker defensive team here. So I like Kotkaniemi as well if you're looking for a one-off play for Showdown.
All right, thank you, Pete. We appreciate your help on the DFS side of things, but it's time for a line change here. Let's bring in Ben Zwyman to take a sportsbook look at things. That's right. Is right, Jeff. Okay, so we're looking at the NHL Conference Finals matchups. Jeff, let's start with you. What is your favorite series play on the DK Sportsbook for the East?
Yeah, for the East, I'm just going to keep it real simple here. I'm going to go with the Carolina Hurricanes just straight up to win. Again, they're minus 135. We kind of talked about this a little bit ad nauseum in the last segment, but I'm just going to go over it again. I mean, you've got Bobrovsky, who is playing so far above expectation right now that you really have to factor in some regression in my point of view, anyways. And on top of that, I mean, you're playing a Carolina Hurricanes team who's been extremely just what you'd call opportunistic in scoring, and they're getting one of their top wingers back. I just think it's a bad mix for the Panthers, to be taking on a team like this. They basically faced the complete opposite in Toronto, who weren't opportunistic with scoring, but had their chances against Florida in the second round. They just didn't pot anything. I think that Carolina is going to do the exact opposite. They're going to take advantage. And I honestly think you could even look to alternate lines like Carolina in 6 or Carolina in 5 here. I really look at the Hurricanes still just undervalued in the market as a whole because they're not a marquee team. And I'm going to take them straight up and maybe even look at like minus 1.5 as well.
All right, AJ, what about you? What is your favorite series play on the DK Sportsbook for the East?
I was fairly confident that Jeff was going to come in with the same takes that I have, and I agree with everything he said. So I prepared for that, and I looked at some series player props here, and I looked at the head-to-head most points between Jordan Staal and Anthony Duclair. You can take Staal to record more points in the series at minus 115, giving up a little bit of juice. But again, you can't underestimate the fact that Teravainen is back and is going to play with Staal. So his winger is going to drastically improve here than he's had so far. And I think he should be capable of producing even more than the 6 points he had in 5 games against New Jersey in the last series. So with that boost for Staal, I like him to edge out Anthony Duclair to have the most head-to-head points in this matchup.
All right, Zwyman, you're here. Let's go. Favorite series play on the DK Sportsbook for the East?
Yeah, so I'm gonna look at some more player props. You guys in the last segment you mentioned Carter Verhaeghe. I like him to score the most goals in the series at plus 650. He's arguably the best goal scorer in the series. I think the big thing here is the Hurricanes spread it out a lot on offense. They don't really have a forward who's going to dominate, the scoring and whatnot. So and they get a lot of offense from their defense. So I think the Panthers, Verhaeghe's going to be in a good spot. He led the Panthers in scoring last series against the Maple Leafs with 3 goals. He had 42 goals during the regular season. I think you can get a lot of value at plus 650. I think Aho and Matt Kachuk are both ahead of him in terms of odds. If you want something a little bit safer, I like Verhaeghe versus Seth Jarvis straight up goals minus 130.
All right, AJ, take us to the West. What is your favorite series play here?
Yeah, I also stuck with the player props here as well. And you can get Joe Pavelski to score 3+ goals in the series at even money. I think that's fantastic value for him. Look, if you took it in the last series, he got it in the first game. Now, I don't expect him to go out and get 4 in game 1 here, but he's averaging 2.7 shots per night and scored in 5 of the 7 games against the Kraken. I expect this to be a little bit longer series, maybe 6 games or 7. So I think asking Pavelski to get 3 over that stretch should be relatively easy. And the fact that you're getting even money on it makes it too good to pass up for me.
All right, so I'm in. Favorite series play in the West. What is too good to pass up here?
Yeah, I like this. The safe bet is Rupe Hintz to have more points than Mark Stone in the series at minus 135. For some reason, they're valuing Eichel and Jason Robertson a lot more on the book side, which is odd because Rupe Hintz leads the NHL, at least remaining players, in both points and goals this postseason with 9 goals and 19 points. I don't really see that slowing down. Maybe he stops having as many goals if Jason Robertson gets going. But if Robertson gets going, you can assume that Hintz is going to be involved in that scoring and pick up some assists. He's also plus 400 to have the most points in the series. Again, if the Stars keep this up, and I think they will, I think Hintz is going to lead the Stars in scoring. He'll have the most points. I think it's pretty safe to assume that Hintz will outscore Mark Stone. If you want something a little bit more juicy, plus 400 to have the most points in the series for Hintz.
All right, Jeff, favorite series play in the West. Is it juicy? Come on.
I don't know. I don't know about juicy, Jesse, but I do like I do like Ben's Rupe Hintz call. I think just to add on to that, because I was going to bring up a couple of his props too. If you're really interested in Dallas, I would look to Rupe Hintz for Finals MVP. I really would. I think that's a good way to play Dallas. He has been the most dominant player in the playoffs to me, and if Dallas makes it, I think that's going to continue. Really like that bet right now. I'm going to take the over 33.5 goals in the total series between Vegas and Dallas. Aiden Hill, backup goalie, going up against Dallas. Don't like that. Jake Ottinger has been all over the place. Vegas has proven that they can kind of score in bunches as well. I think this will go 6, potentially 7 games. I think 33.5 is fine. We're getting the same total on Carolina, Florida, where I would actually probably lean under in the other series. But I would go over here. I think that's a very fair number. I think that, again, this series, you could also see some crazy games. You could see like a 7-2 blowout at some point just because of how volatile the goaltenders have been, which would really give you a big benefit there. So I like going over in the total series. Again, Hintz for the player props, absolutely heat that up. And if I was just taking one straight up, I would take Dallas.
All right, real quick before we let you go, Zwyman, what's your favorite bet on the DK Sportsbook for Game 1 between Florida and Carolina tonight?
I really like Sergei Bobrovsky over 31.5 saves in Game 1. If you look at his road splits, they're actually pretty insane. He's 5-0 on the road this postseason since replacing Alex Lyon in net. Against the Maple Leafs, all the games on the road, he went over this prop and saves. Same deal against Boston. So the trends are really going in the favor of, the Hurricanes will tilt the ice a bit, but Bobrovsky should see a ton of rubber. So I think he goes over 31.5 saves tonight.
Jeff, favorite bet?
Hey, if you want to prop to correlate with that, Sebastian Aho, over 2.5 shots on net. Again, this is not New Jersey. Aho had 11 shots on goal in 3 games against Florida in the regular season. Florida's giving up over 35 shots on net in the playoffs per game. Aho's playing a ton of minutes. He's going to play a ton in Game 1. Over 2.5 shots on net for him. I like it.
AJ, favorite bet?
There's a clear theme here. I like Brent Burns to go over his shot total at 3.5 here. Comes in at minus 110 on the DK Sportsbook, but absolutely agree with Ben as well. I'm going over the Sergei Bobrovsky saves.
All right, thank you guys. Good stuff. We are turning our attention to NBA playoffs when we return.
Yo, DraftKings, y'all got the most ways to bet on NBA players. I'm hyped. Hitting props, that's my dog. Stack up buckets, blocks, and boards on my boy? Or superstar going one-on-one against another superstar? Oh, it's on. And all these bets are on my man's dedicated page? Now you spoiling me, DraftKings. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and bet $5 to win $150 in bonus bets on your team to win. Action so good, why bet anywhere else? That's my move. He used my move.
You know, betting without a game plan is a little like skating a giant ramp without helmet and pads. I wouldn't risk it. And I wouldn't bet without a game plan. DraftKings Sportsbook provides you with tools to set a realistic budget and time limits, so you're ready to bet responsibly. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook and Casino apps to learn more about how you can practice safe bets.
This season, DraftKings Sportsbook is your place to bet on the greatest sport on ice. There's so many ways to get closer to the game. And with this latest offer, you can win big. Now that is deserving of some victory stick taps.
Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app, sign up with the promo code, and take advantage of this great offer.
And get in on the action with an official sports betting partner of the NHL.
With DraftKings Daily Fantasy Sports, you can play for millions with a lineup full of big NBA stars. Maybe you throw in a three-point specialist that's been around the league, seen a thing or two. You know, if you want. Download DraftKings and play for your share of millions. Action's so good, why play NBA anywhere else?
Can't see on here right now. Remember, you were
All
watching.
right, the Heat took down the Celtics in Game 1 of the Eastern Conference Finals to take a 1-0 series lead and steal home court advantage in the series. So let's bring in DraftKings contributor Julian Edlow, DK Nation's Chinmay Vaidya, and DK's Tanner Kern. So Chinmay, Celtics looked firmly in control at halftime. Then the Heat came out and they outscored them 46-25 in the third quarter, setting a franchise record for points in a single quarter in the playoffs in the process. What the hell happened?
Well, the Celtics thought that the Heat would just go away, and they didn't. Miami has shown time and time again in this postseason that it's not just going to fold to the superior team, and Boston fell into that trap once again. Tatum had a few bad plays at the end of the game, 2 travels, and then a turnover on a bad pass in the last 3 minutes. So that's obviously not very good. And we've talked about Boston's struggles closing out games. But the Celtics really, they had 15 turnovers, but Miami had 12 steals. So it wasn't like the Heat, got lucky and Boston was just turning the ball over a bunch. Miami played excellent defense in this game, and really most of that third quarter was the big difference. And then it was a 3-point shot again. I mean, the Celtics shot 34.5% from deep, and they're a 500 team when they shoot below 40%. In Game 6 and Game 7 against the Sixers, they hit above that 40% clip, won both games. And I think they've only lost 2 games all season when they've shot 40% or better. And this one, they just simply didn't hit enough threes. And ultimately, it looks like that's going to be the story for the Celtics this season if they can't keep the turnovers down in clutch moments, and if they're going to, not play or not give away the game in key moments, then it's going to be on that 3 ball, and it just wasn't there in Game 1.
Jules, what do they need to bring in Game 2?
They need to play like it's the playoffs. Jaylen Brown said they were playing like it's a regular season game. That's not going to cut it. But the team does the same thing over and over again. They lose their intensity. They come out. They play lackadaisically at home as big favorites now in back-to-back Game 1s. And they come back and show up and win the following game. Coming off of a postseason loss over the last 2 postseasons, a postseason home loss. The Celtics are 7-1 straight up and against the spread the following game. If you want to look at the NBA overall, the last 16 times that a team has lost a Game 1 at home in the NBA, that team has come back to go 16-0 in Game 2, 15-1 against the spread. You want to look at how the Celtics do in the Eastern Conference Finals against the Heat. They've beat them 6 times over the last few years. This is the 3rd series they've matched up. 5 of those wins were by 11 or more points. So the Celtics come out flat. We've seen it from this team over the last 2 years, but it's been highlighted even more this season. And then they generally bounce back strong. So this is who the Celtics are. If they're going to win the title, they're the most talented team. If they're going to win the title, they're going to have to do it while continuing to kind of, I don't want to say shoot themselves in the foot, because credit to Miami, they played a great game, but they're going to have to do it while kind of handing some games away.
Tanner, it feels like the Celtics perform the best when the pressure's on. So what, they have to like back themselves into a corner before they can perform well?
I guess so. I mean, they had a 94% chance to win, according to ESPN, when they had a 13-point lead with 2 minutes to go in the second quarter last night, and they just couldn't find a way to do it. But this is typical Boston basketball. They love giving games away that they should win, and we've seen it over and over again. In the postseason, they come out in game 2 and they find a way to win. But my biggest concern coming out of last night was the coaching from Joe Mazzulla. He was out-coached once again. Eric Spoelstra is a brilliant basketball mind, and I think we're going to see that play time and time again in this series. Jason Tatum was playing off the ball down the stretch. He wasn't even touching the ball in a lot of those possessions where they needed baskets, and that was a concern. I mean, Jason Tatum was sloppy, Jaylen Brown was sloppy, but you got to bring it back to coaching a little bit too and say, why wasn't there a timeout called? Why wasn't there any adjustments made to what the Heat were doing in that third quarter and fourth quarter when they just went on their run? So I think they'll be good in game 2. I think they'll come out on fire, but you can't just give away games that you're supposed to win in the postseason.
All right, let's turn our attention to tonight's second game of the Western Conference Finals, Lakers Nuggets. Jules, who do you want in the captain spot in this one?
You got to go Jokic. You can't really go any other way. If he's going to be putting up 70 to 80 points, you want that 1.5 times multiplier, and you figure it out with the rest of your lineup. So he's that guy right now. He's putting up ridiculous numbers. You can get cute with a value play and try and fit more studs, but forget it. I want Jokic in the captain spot.
All right, Tanner, who do you want?
Yeah, I got to go with Jokic as well with 1.5 times regular fantasy points there. There's no brainer. I mean, 34 points, 21 rebounds, 14 assists, triple-double. I don't think he'll put up these numbers necessarily, but he's still going to be doing a lot of numbers, and that's going to contribute to a lot of fantasy points. So you got to go with him.
All right, Chinmay, who do you want?
Yeah, I mean, the guys have said it, even at just under 19K, it's really hard to go against Nikola Jokic. Since game 1 against the Suns, when he put up only 55.8 DK fantasy points. And I say only because since that game, he's had 4 games where he's had 72 or more, and 4 games with at least 72 DK fantasy points. 2 of those games, he's gone over 80, and then he had 88.8 in the last game. I mean, those are just unbelievable numbers. I don't know why you would fade Jokic in this spot in the midst of this run. He's playing at an absurd level right now. And even at the price point, I think you just got to go with the big man and hope he keeps this thing going.
All right, Tanner, what do we think? What's the play in this one?
So I'm going to be on the Lakers at plus 5.5 here. They posted similar numbers to the Nuggets in game 1 in most categories, but there was one area where it clearly went to Denver, and that was in the rebounding battle and also transition offense. I think LA is going to be better in these categories. They showed they could make adjustments against the Warriors in that series. I think they're going to bring it tonight. Jokic is still going to have a huge game. We know that's going to be the case, but Denver did not prove that they could shut down Anthony Davis down low from a scoring perspective, a rebounding perspective, and just on defense as well. So I like the Lakers at plus 5.5. They're very similar to the Celtics, and they don't show up consistently, but on the games they do show up, they are very, very good. So look for the Nuggets get tired down the stretch, and the Lakers take advantage of that and cover the spread here.
All right, Tanner, what's your favorite game bet for this one?
So game bet, so prop-wise, I'm going to go Nikola Jokic over 10.5. This number was 9.5 before. I'm going to go up to 10.5 and play it. So I think he's going to get 11 here just because they're going to collapse down on him. They're going to try to find ways to neutralize him down the paint. That's going to open up guys like Jamal Murray on the perimeter, and I think he hits this number pretty easily.
Chinmay, how about you?
I'm going with Jokic as well, but I actually like over 1.5 3-pointers for Jokic. He's shooting 51.2% from deep in the postseason. That clip is not sustainable, but the Lakers are giving him space on the perimeter. And, if you're going to choose a way for Nikola Jokic to beat you, it's probably going to be him hoisting threes instead of him operating in the post, feeding Denver's role players and then taking it to the basket himself. And it's not a huge number, right? It's 1.5. He only needs to hit 2. He hit all 3 of his perimeter shots in game 1. I think he takes more perimeter shots here, but he only needs to hit a couple. And at plus money, I think over 1.5 threes is a nice play.
All right, Jules, hit me.
Yeah, I'm going Rui Hachimura with the points over 11.5. We're talking about what the Lakers are going to do to adjust in game 2. We saw some of those adjustments in game 1. It was putting Rui Hachimura on the floor more and matching up with Nikola Jokic. So he's been good in the postseason. He was strong early in the Memphis series. He had at least 16 in each of the first 3 games. every game 2 so far in the postseason, he's gone for 20 plus. He had 17 in 28 minutes in game 1. I think he's going to go for 12 plus in this game.
All right, good stuff, guys. Thank you. The WNBA season tips off on Friday, and I had a chance to catch up with VSiN's Danielle Alvari to talk about which teams are primed for a championship run, and super teams, obviously. Had to talk about that.
I'm not a fan of his hair. Let's just put that out.
Wait, what's wrong with the hair, though?
I'm
Trying
to
get in his head.
I don't like. It's a bang. It's a bang. You don't see him when I do. He bangs it. He plays with it, pulls it down, lets it up.
You know
Flicks
what?
him in the face. I've seen it twice.
Oh, man.
Yeah. So I've seen it twice.
He has a bang? He has a bang?
He pulls it down. It's a bang.
Is game time bang? Or
Jason Tatum has a weave.
Oh, wait.
I said it. I said it. There it is.
No, whatever makes him feel it's fly. A bunch.
Jason Tatum, the front part of his hair is not real.
Is it lace?
It's a piece.
He's
wearing a piece.
I can't be a part of this.
Jason Tatum is wearing a piece. I said it.
I can't be a part of this.
Whatever makes him feel good, though.
I'm telling you right now. I'm telling you guys what I know.
I can't
You
be
can
a
either
part of
listen to what I'm saying or not. Look at the front part of his hair. It doesn't match the back. Cat's out the bag. Jason, take that.
I think he's trying to get in his head.
I'm not trying to get in his head.
He ain't on the court with him.
I'm not on the court, but by me telling the truth.
But you're courtside, and I feel like the celebrities who sit courtside.
I'm telling you what I know.
So I have a question now. Are there weaves in the NBA?
Well, in Tatum's case, yeah.
I just had to know.
Okay, if you guys can ignore the obvious, I'm telling you what's real. I'll give you something else.
No, it's okay. It's okay.
Jaylen Brown's calves aren't real.
Okay.
This is real. This is real information.
Yo,
this is real information. Prosthetics.
His calves.
His calves.
Calves not real.
I'm giving you guys real information.
Calves.
Prosthetic calves. Get a close up on his calves.
This is important betting
This
information.
is important
I need to
information.
know
All right.
for the
I'm not
shot.
saying I want them checked, but have they checked them?
This is secret.
Have they checked them?
I can't.
Calves is
Shout
secret intel.
out Jaylen Brown too, man.
No, you can shout them out.
I gotta shout them out, man. They're good guys. They're good guys.
You can check out the full episode of Kevin Hart's visit to the compound on YouTube. And joining us now is one of the members of DraftKings Starting 5 series, Danielle Alvari. Danielle, thank you for joining the show. We're thrilled to have you.
Thanks for having me. Very exciting times.
Okay, so we're actually here to talk a little WNBA with you, okay? But first, we got to get your take on like the experience of working on the Starting 5, which you can watch, by the way, on the DraftKings YouTube channel. You recently had Kevin Hart on, which is so cool. So who's been like your favorite person to have in the studio and on the show?
Well, it'd be unfair to put Kevin Hart up against everyone else. We all know how hilarious he is. So he was absolutely so much fun to have on set and just had us rolling from the second he walked in the door. But also from the show, one of my favorite guests was Iman Shumpert. He's so multifaceted. He's played in the NBA. He raps. He's into fashion. He won Dancing with the Stars. And he's an incredible storyteller. So getting to hear him talk about his time in the NBA and break it all down was definitely one of my favorites. So definitely check that one out too.
Oh, absolutely. Well, aside from your work on the Starting 5, you're also a host at VSiN where you cover, among other things, the WNBA. So you had a long season preview article on VSiN.com. One of the biggest storylines of the WNBA offseason is a storyline that's all too familiar to NBA fans, and that is super teams. Super teams, you got the Las Vegas Aces, the New York Liberty. Who has the edge in this WNBA arms race?
It's impossible. It's impossible to decide, but I'm going to give a slight edge here to the New York Liberty. I think they have just a little bit more depth to withstand any health issues or injuries that could pop up, even in a 40-game season. They have an incredible facilitator in point guard Courtney Vandersloot, who they added from the Sky in the offseason, and 2 MVPs in Brianna Stewart and Jonquil Jones, not to mention a healthy Sabrina Ionescu, who can now play off the ball more with Courtney Vandersloot there. Opens things up quite a bit for her. You can see that Sabrina Ionescu and Brianna Stewart are the top 2 Liberty players in the MVP odds for that reason. But some of these players have also played together in other capacities, because some of the concern around the Liberty is, have they played enough together yet? Are they going to gel once they hit the court? Stewart, Ionescu, Benijah Laney all played on Team USA together, and Courtney Vandersloot and Brianna Stewart have both won championships together overseas already. So at least there's a little bit of that familiarity. But on the other side, as anyone in sports knows, it's very difficult to repeat as champions. The Las Vegas Aces do return nearly everybody and added Candace Parker, another MVP, and Alicia Clark, both of them some of the best defenders you could possibly ask for, which if there was a weak side to the Aces, it was the defense, but it was only because their offense was so prolific and so fast. They have that continuity factor working for them, but once the Liberty get comfortable together, I think watch out.
Okay, well, the DK Sportsbook does have a prop where you can pick either the Liberty or Aces to win the title this season for minus 475. You can get plus 350 for picking the field here. So what individual teams do you think have a shot at competing for the championship?
Well, the plus 350 is not so interesting to me because unfortunately there's only about 2 other teams, maybe 3. 3 would be pushing it, that can contend with these top 2 teams, these super teams. And that would be on their absolute best day, fully healthy with a B12 shot probably thrown in. But nevertheless, the team that I'm high on here is third in the odds, the Mystics at 14-1. Now, it's hilarious because you've heard some people describe them as a sleeper team, and I don't know how, because they still have an MVP in Elena Delle Donne. And again, they're third in the odds. So I like the Mystics value there at 14-1. Otherwise, you're getting less than plus 200 for these top 2 teams. The Sun are also interesting at 40-1. They did lose their head coach in Kurt Miller, but they added a new head coach in. They still retained a lot of the same core of the players, and sitting at 40-1 seems like a good long shot. The Dream could be interesting this year, but I don't think it's their championship year.
Okay, one of the stars that you mentioned earlier, Breanna Stewart of the New York Liberty, she's the front runner for MVP on the DraftKings Sportsbook, plus 280. But I mean, it seems to be a pretty crowded race. So who do you have your eye on for that award?
Yeah, just about every Aces starter is in the MVP discussion, which tells you about that team. And then, of course, like I mentioned, Breanna Stewart, Sabrina Ionescu for the Liberty. I think these super teams could be working against themselves a little bit, where maybe they're stealing votes from each other in this MVP discussion. It wasn't necessarily the case last year, but it could be this year. So I might be looking to an Elena Delle Donne sitting at 10-1 there. She was 16-1 just last week, so you can see a little bit of action moving that way. On Elena Delle Donne, I think that that's good value there on a player who's going to be the star of her team. She's the only MVP on her team. They only have one. It's really embarrassing. So I like Elena Delle Donne here. As a longer shot, though, I've heard a lot of people talk about Alyssa Thomas of the Sun. Again, the Sun may surprise us this year, and Alyssa Thomas is going to be the engine for that team. I think Jonquel Jones' departure actually opens things up for her. So if you're looking at a team that's not one of these top 2 and you want a longer shot, Alyssa Thomas at 40-1 was a great pick. I think some books have even shifted her down now to 19-1, which I still don't hate.
Okay, what about Aaliyah Boston? She was the #1 overall pick in the draft by Indiana. She's the favorite to win Rookie of the Year at minus 200. Is this her award to lose?
It feels that way, doesn't it? But it's a lot of pressure on a rookie. And we know that at the end of the day, Rookie of the Year comes down to how much playing time the players actually get. So the 2 shortest shots here are Aaliyah Boston, who is going to be on the Indiana Fever, the worst team back-to-back years in the league, the worst team against the spread, won 5 games last year. She has her work cut out for her, but I think if she can get them to something like 9 or 10 wins, that would be considered a win for them. But I think the ceiling is even as high as maybe playoffs if everything goes right for that team. Outside of that, Diamond Miller on the Lynx is the 2nd shortest shot. And I think that she's going to see a lot of playing time. We saw Sylvia Fowles retire from this Lynx team, so they're going to be relying on her a lot. I don't necessarily think it's Aaliyah's to lose. I don't want to put that on her. We also thought South Carolina would win the national championship. They were an undefeated team. It's a terrible thing to bring up when I'm talking about the lovely and talented Aaliyah Boston. But nevertheless, not everything that we expect to happen happens. So I don't think it's hers to lose, but she is rightfully so the favorite.
Okay, well, one of the other big storylines of the WNBA season is the expansion to a 40-game regular season schedule. I mean, that's the most games ever in a WNBA season. So it seems like a good time here to target some WNBA win totals. Which teams do you think could actually benefit from the expanded schedule?
Certainly the top teams, their totals are very high, 30.5 at most spots for the New York Liberty and for the Las Vegas Aces. 31 wins in a 40-game schedule is a lot. The Aces won 26 games last year, so even if you add 4 wins in, we're still up to 30. And again, this year they actually have another super team to compete with. So I think those win totals are a touch too high. And for me, I always like to err on the side of unders. I'm not fun. I like unders. And I would lean under for both of these teams just because it's hard. It's a big ask to do 31 of the 40 games. I know there's some people who disagree with me, but of the win totals, some of the other unders I like is the Chicago Sky, under their win total, I think sitting around 16.5. I just think as much as they are trying to put out that this is not a rebuilding year for them, they really got gutted losing both Candace Parker and Courtney Vandersloot, not to mention Allie Quigley. So really hard to repair there. But Kalia Copper has her work cut out for her and should make a big step forward this year. Already was the leading scorer last year. Still think they're going to go under. And I also think that the Minnesota Lynx are very much in a we're thinking about the future sort of path right now. And so I think that under their 17.5 or even 16.5 win total is going to be good for them as well. No exciting overs for me, unfortunately.
Okay, well, those two teams, we got to talk about them. The Lynx and the Sky played a preseason game to a sold-out crowd in Toronto this past weekend. It was the league's first ever game in Canada. So much enthusiasm. I mean, what sort of hope does that give you for the growth of the sport here?
I think that everything's capitalizing on that NCAA championship game this year. People are finally watching women's basketball more, and I think a lot of it has contributed to the storylines we've gotten out of it. So I'm really excited to see it grow. It was sold out in Canada. It was an incredible event. I know that everybody there was very excited. They've been begging for a team there. And of course, as we see these final roster cuts coming in the WNBA, we're just begging and begging for more and more expansion. But it was very successful in Canada. And they were also planned ahead to have enough gear for everybody who came out. And I know that that went really well for them as well. So it does seem like everything is going well for women's basketball this year.
Okay, before I let you go, do you have any betting advice on how fans should approach the WNBA this season? Is it similar to betting NBA games, or do you take a different approach?
Yeah, similar in some ways. I mean, what's the thing we hear about in the NBA that's just exhausting at this point? Load management, and frankly, who's playing and who's not. But in the WNBA, you won't run into that as much. It's a 40-game season. The players you will run that into that too is the veteran older players, Diana Taurasi. Even her head coach, Vanessa Nygaard, has already said that she's going to be implementing that with her. So just some of the older players is something to keep an eye on for that if you're worried about who's playing, who's not. Otherwise, you don't have to worry about that much with the WNBA. I love live betting it, especially the totals. You'll get some really good defensive games, especially out of the Washington Mystics last year. So for me, just have fun and start betting it.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Danielle. And once again, check out Danielle on the Starting Five on the DraftKings YouTube channel and read her WNBA season preview on VSiN.com. And get this, VSiN has all your WNBA betting needs covered on their new YouTube series and Twitter handle, Bet the W. Visit @BetTheW Show on Twitter to see clips and dedicated coverage to women's sports betting news and info. Check it out. It's time to take a look at tonight's MLB slate. It's small, 2 games. We got the Yankees north of the border in Toronto and the Dodgers in St. Louis facing the Cards. So let's punch up DraftKings contributor Steve Buchanan, Garion Thorne, and RotoWire's Eric Halterman for Put Up Your Bukes. Steve is going to give his plays for the following DFS and Sportsbook questions, and the panel is going to agree or offer an alternative. As we know, Garion's way of doing things is he always disagrees. So Steve, put up your first buke, please.
Yeah, really excited to hear Garion, try to pick from the other 3 remaining pitchers that are on this slate here tonight. So best of luck to him, but it's a gross, ugly slate for a 2-game slate here. So I guess I'm rolling with Jose Barrios going up against the Yankees. I feel like he hasn't been as bad as maybe his numbers are kind of showing here on the surface. He has a 4.70 ERA, not that great, but he does have a 3.59 FIP. I feel like he's been pitching better as of lately too as well, especially when you consider some of the opponents that he's faced as of late. Had a pretty nice start against the Braves his last time out, but what really kind of caught my attention is how good he's been at home this season. 1.53 ERA, 239 WOBA through 17 2/3 innings. This Yankees offense has been night and day all season long. Kind of feels like it's on a downtrodden as of late. If they're not hitting for power, they're really just not getting on base at this point. So obviously the power can put up those runs quickly, but I think Barrios can do enough with the 4 pitchers that you have to choose from to go up against the Yankees.
All right, Garion, it's gross. Make your pick here.
Yeah, I mean, here's what I'll say. If I'm ranking the pitchers on tonight's slate, it goes as follows. Jose Urias, who's the best pitcher available, got roughed up a couple starts, but 2 earned runs or fewer in 7 of his 9 outings so far this season. He's averaging just under a strikeout per inning thrown, but 6+ strikeouts in 5 of his 9 starts so far this season. The Cardinals are great against lefties, granted, but still, he is, without question, the best actual pitcher going tonight. And then I think Barrios and Nestor Cortes are kind of interchangeable. I think I'd have Cortes ranked higher just because he's cheaper. And also, the Yankees offense in May has the 2nd best WRC plus in baseball, whereas the Blue Jays are kind of slumping a little bit. It's unclear if Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is going to be back in the lineup tonight. And if he's not, I think I'd prefer Cortes over Jose Barrios. Mainly, though, the point is just don't play Adam Wainwright. Basically take those three guys and put them in pairs of two, however you want to, and then stack bats around them. Just don't play Adam Wainwright.
All right, Eric, I certainly hope you're not doing that.
Yeah, that was definitely the one that I ruled out before deciding on the other three. And I am going to actually stick with Steve here and go with Jose Barrios. Don't feel great about it. Less about the agreeing with Steve thing. That's Garion's bit, but more about the picking Jose Barrios thing. But after a terrible first start against the Royals this year, it looked like Barrios was going to be on track for another awful season. It hasn't really happened, though. He wasn't great in his second outing either, but since then, a 2.97 ERA. And on the season overall, pretty much all his ERA estimators are about a run better than his actual ERA. Strikeout rate is not amazing, but is completely fine, right about league average. And he's not walking a lot of guys. And he has a career best 51.1% ground ball rate. Don't love Barrios, but this matchup is actually the easiest one on the slate in terms of performance so far this year. The Yankees rank 15th in team WRC+. The other three teams all sit between 5 and 10. So as much as I'm not comfortable with it, I think on this small 4-game slate, I think Barrios has enough to look his way.
All right, Steve, we need your pick for a big bat here.
Yeah, going to go with Bo Bichette here in this matchup against the Yankees, going up against Nestor Cortez. Bichette has been so good against lefties so far this season, really throughout his career, but specifically this year thus far, 386 WOBA, 147 WRC+, and he's been having a stellar month of May too as well. 5 doubles, 2 home runs during the month of May. Add that on to some really good numbers overall. I think this is a great spot for Bichette. The power has kind of calmed down a little bit here, but he's been getting on base at such a good rate that I think going up against Nestor Cortez, who we'll talk about here in a minute, I think he's one of the better bats here on this 2-game slate.
All right, Eric, are you going to agree with Steve here or put up your bukes?
More or less agree. I guess I'll say Vlad Jr. as my guy just to be different here. But really the point is I think you want the Blue Jays against Nestor Cortez. And Vlad Jr. might not even play. Missed yesterday with banged up knee. If he doesn't play, pivot me to Bo Bichette, and I guess we agree. But the point is, again, load up on the Blue Jays tonight on this slate. Nestor Cortez has looked shaky. 2.61 ERA over his last 2 years, but the ERA estimators there were about a run higher, mainly because he doesn't keep the ball on the ground at all. A 31.2% ground ball rate across the last 2 seasons, all the way down at 23.6% this year. Basically, every other pitcher is in the 30s, 40s, or 50s, and he's in the low 20s. When you fail to keep the ball on the ground, you give up extra base hits. This year, he's up at a 5.53 ERA. The Blue Jays have enough bats who can do damage when Cortez is giving up balls in the air. So whether it's Vlad, whether it's Bo Bichette, whether it's Matt Chapman, really all those guys would be guys I'd be looking at to lead my lineup tonight.
Gary, and I know that you're going to be loading up on one of those Blue Jays.
I mean, Steve's making this really hard. 2-game slate, picking back-to-back Blue Jays. Anyone in the DraftKings Slack knows Bo Bichette's beautiful, stunning face and long, luscious hair is my display pick. So it's going to be hard for me to disagree with this, but guys, we get to pick on Adam Wainwright tonight. Like, I don't know how much longer we're going to get to do this. I'm just going to go with Freddie Freeman. So far this season, it's a limited sample, but believe me, he's cooked. Adam Wainwright has faced 26 left-handed batters. They are hitting .417 with a .708 slugging percentage. Surprisingly, Freddie Freeman's power numbers against righties have been down this season. He's actually hit 5 of his 7 home runs off lefties, but he's still hitting .342 against right-handed pitching this season. He's got a 162 WRC plus in May, so it seems like his bat has really been heating up the last couple of weeks. And he's sub 5K. I mean, sub 5K Freddie Freeman against Adam Wainwright. Give me that every single time.
All right, let's move on to the sportsbook side of things here. Steve, give us your game bet here that you're going to be rolling with.
Yeah, I'm not going to be ignoring picking on Adam Wainwright because I can do that over on DraftKings Sportsbook. I can go over 8.5 runs for Dodgers and Cardinals tonight. I mean, look, even, you know, who we talking about? Garion? I almost said Julian. I don't know why. But Garion, I know that's very insulting. I'm very, very sorry. Julio Urias has not been good on the road so far this season. 6.1 ERA, 3.93 WOBA in his starts on the road. already allowed 10 home runs total through 9 starts thus far. Then you got Adam Wainwright, which we've been kind of talking about throughout this segment here. Only 2 starts under his belt, whatever. 7.2 ERA, 5.49 expected ERA. His velocity on his fastball is the second lowest in the league, only to Rich Hill. His fastball is slower than most changeups in Major League Baseball at this point. So I think that the Cardinals, the Dodgers should put up a lot of runs in this one here. I'm surprised this is only at 8.5. Obviously, the majority of the runs were expected is to come from the Dodgers, but it's not as if Urias has been stellar like we saw last year either. So give me over 8.5 runs for this game.
And the line has moved to 9 at this point. All right.
See what happens?
Yep. It's the power of put up your bukes. All right, Garion, what are you doing here?
I'm just going to take the Dodgers on the run line. I agree with Steve. I think the Cardinals are very capable of scoring runs in this game, but I just think the Dodgers are going to just absolutely bludgeon Adam Wainwright. I think the pitching disparity is pretty big in this spot, and Dodgers run line is plus 105 right now. They're 24-20 on the run line this season. That's a top 10 mark in all of baseball. I just don't want to overthink it that much. I do not trust Adam Wainwright. I'm going to fade him for as long as I can.
All right, Eric, what are you doing here?
Yeah, the line on the one I'm interested in is moving as well. It was 9 runs in that Yankees-Jays game. It's now down to 8.5. I'm taking the over quite happily for basically all the reasons we've talked about already. No real faith in Nestor Cortez, given how much contact in the air he's given up this season. And even though 2 of us did pick Jose Barrios, that came with pretty heavy caveats. I think we're going to see a lot of runs here. These 2 teams are averaging 9.26 runs per game. So even with that over-under set at 9, you just need an average offensive performance, assuming they could find a way to sneak in that fractional 0.26 runs. Now you can even round down to 9 and we'll still hit the over. So I'm pretty happy with that bet.
All right, Steve, hit us with a pitching prop that you're liking.
Yeah, I was talking about Nestor Cortez. You can take him under 16.5 outs recorded tonight against the Blue Jays. I like this one a lot here. He has not looked good over his past 3 starts specifically. 15 runs allowed through 14 innings pitched against the Rays, Athletics, and Rangers. There's a couple of tough offenses mixed in there, but it's not as if the Blue Jays aren't one of those teams. What concerns me here is that his ground ball rate is way down compared from last year. 33.5% last year, 23.6% this year. That also means fly balls are way up, almost a 60% fly ball rate on the year. That is going to spell trouble, especially in Toronto, where those walls were moved in a little bit during the offseason here. So I think he's in for a short night here tonight. So give me Nestor Cortez under 16.5 outs recorded.
Eric, Nestor Cortez is struggling. Are you rolling with Steve on this one or putting up your bukes?
I think that one's perfectly fine. I've got another one to highlight, though. That would be Julio Urias to get a win at plus 105. I like that a lot better than the Dodgers money line at minus 150. It's similar to the Dodgers run line. It's also plus 105. But if the reason you think the Dodgers are going to win is because Adam Wainwright is just not good enough to shut down a Dodgers lineup at this stage in his career, and if you think Julio Urias can pitch at least 5 innings, which he can, he's going to get the win. I think that's actually the safer play than the run line to me. I suppose you're leaving yourself up to some weirdness with the bullpens if you go with the pitcher win, but there could be weirdness with the bullpens affecting the run line as well. I think if you think that Urias is much better than Wainwright, which I think most of us do, I think pick the Urias win here.
All right, Garion, what's the play?
So Wainwright's hits allowed prop is set at 6.5. It is plus 120 to the over. This is hitting both of his first starts. I don't know what is going on with this line. The Dodgers also have the best WOBA against right-handed pitching of any team in the National League. Again, I was expecting maybe 7.5 here, considering he's given up 7 and 8 hits in his first 2 starts. The perfect thing about Wainwright in this prop is he doesn't strike out anyone. He's got a 93% zone contact rate so far this season. He's also not walking anyone. He's just throwing batting practice fastballs over the middle of the plate, and the Dodgers hitters get to benefit from that. So he's got to last like 4 or 5 innings for this to actually hit, but I think he's going to. So over 6.5 hits.
All right, super quick on your hitter prop, Steve.
Nolan Arenado over 1.5 hits, runs, and RBIs. He's gone over this number 12 of the 14 games he's played in the month of May. Make it 13.
All right, Garion, what do we think?
Gonna go Anthony Rizzo over 1.5 hits, runs, and RBIs at plus 100. He is 9 for 22 with a 1.2 OPS for his career off of Jose Barrios. Barrios has been pummeled by left-handed batters.
All right, Eric, what's the play?
Another one of these same bets. Alejandro Kirk is minus 110 to go over 1.5 hits plus runs plus RBI. He's having a down year, but he's not that bad. If you look at the underlying numbers, more walks than strikeouts. Barrel rate actually right in line with last year. But given everything that we've said about Nestor Cortez, I like Alejandro Kirk, assuming he's in the lineup to get a couple of hits here.
Excellent work on this small slate, fellas. That is a show. The Sweat will be back tomorrow morning at 11 a.m. Eastern. The slate is coming your way this evening at 5 p.m., but we'll see you tomorrow at 11 a.m.
Okay.